All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Show and Tell with Reach the World. For over 20 years, Reach the World has used virtual exchange to inspire youth to become curious, confident global citizens. My name is Tim, and as part of Reach the World's efforts to support educators and families during the COVID-19 pandemic, we are sharing free live stream show and tell events with members of our global community. You can find an updated calendar of live stream events and much, much more at athome.reachtheworld.org. And for today's show and tell, I'm really excited to welcome Tom Wang. Tom is one of Reach the World's wonderful volunteer editors for Morgan Stanley, and he has a really interesting collection he wants to share with us today. To our live stream viewers, please be sure to let us know you're here and share any questions for Tom using the YouTube chat bar. And we'll get to as many questions as we can at the end. But for now, I want to welcome to Show and Tell Tom. Hey, Tom.
Hi, Tim. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. I'm glad you could join us today. Thanks.
Happy to be here. And
What do you have to show us?
Perfect. Jumping straight in, as the teaser from the promotional poster, I have a set of 3 Turkish bowls. So the ones that I have are quite small, but you can still tell how intricate the painting and the handwork that goes into these bowls are. And for each of these Turkish bowls, they are 100% handmade and hand painted. These are actually from Croatia, and I collected these last year, but you can find them all around the Mediterranean. As you might start to pick up on, some of the common patterns or motifs are flowers, specifically tulips. There's also a big focus on birds and very ornate geometric shapes. And this blue color is actually quite traditional. And it's both this royal navy blue as well as more of the porcelain china blue that you find in the Far East. Those are fairly common colors in Turkish ceramics. And specifically, there's a town in Turkey called Iznik that is famous for their ceramic and tile work. If you guys have a chance to travel to that part and when it's safe to do so, that town is from the floor to the buildings going all the way up, you can see gorgeously bright and beautifully painted ceramics. And just a quick note about this material. Ceramics was actually first used almost 20,000 years ago. The first instance of it was in China, but it spread throughout Asia, through Russia, and onward into Europe. And the Greek islands, specifically Phoenicia, was actually the first, I think, was the first to have ceramic pottery that's traded. So it's a very ancient material, but it's one that is also incredibly valuable and necessary. Every as Tim and I were chatting before, every culture has some sort of a bowl, and a bowl is absolutely essential for eating, and we all enjoy that. And jumping straight back to what matters, this is a slightly larger Turkish bowl, and you see how some of the patterns start to repeat. These triangular petals that are that are present in the smaller bowls are also here in the larger bowls. And this one has a really nice red hue. And again, we see a lot of floral work, a lot of that bright royal blue.
And can I ask you a quick question?
Of course.
What got you interested in ceramics and collecting bowls as part of your travels?
It's actually because I love to cook. So I like to collect different bowls because I like serving food in different mediums. And I think presentation is a big part of how you eat and how you express how you're trying to feed others. And so having different bowls and different sets of cookery reminds me of both the travel, which is always so amazing and so worth it, as well as trying to make a particular moment or particular meal more special.
Very cool. Very cool.
And trying to bring it home a little bit. This is, it's not a tiny bowl, but I hope you guys will entertain this. This is actually a set of 3 different pieces of handcrafted pottery right here in New York. And this was done by a student at the Greenwich House, which provide a bunch of good services to people all over the city. And I got this as part of a fundraiser, and you see how really anyone can learn how to create beautiful, incredible pottery in the span of a few months or a year. And one of my coworkers actually taking a pottery class right now, trying to reach this skill level. And so you can see how ceramic is such a versatile material. It can be incredibly thin and brightly painted, or it can be more natural and more rough hewn. And so next is something a little bit different. This is actually a shell bow. So it's made from a single piece of shell. Actually, my wife got this from Denmark, and it's been with us for 6 years now. This is incredibly beautiful. It's um, I can't even imagine what the original shell was, but they were able to curve it into this round shape, and you can see the original minerality of this material inside, and it has that beautiful natural gleam, as well as the lacquer that they apply on the outside. And to Tim's point about how shells are or bows are so common and natural, even nature have their own bows that we can get to enjoy. I'll pause
That's
there.
pretty. I like that one a lot. It doesn't
And
look like it's very heavy. Is that really light?
it is super light. I actually get nervous every time I bring this whenever I pack or move, because it is so fragile, and it seems like an eggshell to me that if you squeeze it or if you drop it, it will shatter immediately. So this one I try to be careful with. So next up, we have something slightly different again. These two are from the United Kingdom, and I got these just recently in February, when thankfully we were able to still be out and about. This is a tiny vase, not a bowl, but a vase. I guess you could also use it as a small mug. It can maybe have a few drops of coffee in there. And this is a great example of what an apprentice potter will be making. So the antique dealer that I was talking to estimated that this was made sometime in 1940, 1950s. And they could tell the time period by both the color that's used, as well as this pattern. Not sure how well that shows up.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and we were so impressed that they were able to do that as well, because this being an apprentice piece, there's not really any sort of a marking, or there's no notable signs that this is made by anyone famous. So just from the color, we can tell an approximation of how old this is. That was already really interesting. And it's, again, so amazing how they can flute the mouth or the neck of the vase so thinly. And most of the time, people are just using their big thumb and their first finger, I guess, to form that shape. And sometimes they will put a tool inside to crack to push out the bottom. But really, it takes such an immense amount of patience and care to produce the final product.
What are the actual ingredients, for lack of a better word, of
Oh,
ceramic? What is ceramic made out of?
that's a great question, Tim. It's actually really simple. Ceramic is made of clay, and a very specific type of clay, because um, as you can tell, soil over the world is different. So is sand. So ceramic is the type of sand that, or the clay that's made into ceramic, is usually more mineralized and has more of the heavy metals than what you find on the beach. So the sand that everyone sees at the beach is usually very soft, very finely, uh, very fine particles, and so is the sand that's in clay. But then along with that, there's a lot of iron and other minerals to give it the strength that it needs in order to hold its shape after being heated
Hmm.
to 1,000 degrees. And that's part of the reason why ceramic is found all over the world, because there is an abundance of clay almost everywhere. And interesting fun fact: sand, when struck by lightning, is what produced natural glass. So lightning being such a high energy event or phenomenon. When it strikes sand, the silica and some of the other minerals in the glass immediately solidify and it forms into natural glass. And we've adopted that to create the man-made glass that we enjoy today.
Wow.
And similarly, this is not porcelain. I mean, this is not ceramic, but this is porcelain. And porcelain very similarly uses clay, but it's a different composition. And this specifically is bone china porcelain. And so they've actually added a few other ingredients to give it this incredibly bright hue. There's fine china, which a lot of people use as dinnerware. So plates, bowls, other things around the table are made of fine china. And then bone china is usually made for more ornamental or decorative pieces like this. This is a milk pitcher from the UK, and it's from the Alderland company. And they were one of the biggest mass manufacturers starting the 1800s. And they provided a lot of what people use in homes all over the UK throughout the 18th and 1900s. This one, even though it's almost 100 years old, is still in incredibly good shape. And it's amazing how they can be so detailed on such a rough or curved surface.
Would that pattern have been hand painted on there?
Yes. So even though this is a fairly commercialized and mass-produced object, I think it was all hand painted as well.
Amazing.
Yeah. And just a last piece of a bowl to share. This is to the theme of increasing in size. This is a ramen bowl, and it's sort of a modern interpretation of one. But this is a great example of how bowls can range all over the world depending on usage. And just a quick plug about ramen. Ramen is sort of like the pizza of the United States. There's a different style or a different type depending on the region. We have, New York slice. There's also Chicago deep dish. Similarly with ramen, there's the kind that's made with pork. There's the kind that's made with chicken. So everyone customizes it to their need. Similarly to the post that we saw, everyone adapts this abundantly or commonly found material to best suit their situation and what they need. And I guess as a closing thought about ceramic, this humble material is actually now in engines and spaceships and medical equipment and all over, because it is so strong and yet it can be so malleable. It can take on a large shape or be incredibly small. Microscopic ceramic is a key component of medical devices, of the all types of transportation, of the energy sector. So it's incredible how something that's been with us for 20,000 plus years continues to be used and applied in new ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to get back to your question about how people's clay in different parts of the world is different. Can you tell by looking at the ceramics from different parts of the world that, like, could you identify without any other clues by looking at the ceramic what part of the world is from? Is it that identifiable?
In some ways you could. There are some large differences or local specialities when it comes to types of ceramic. So part of the telltale signs are in the legs. So sometimes you'll see that this type of stem legs is usually more common in Western bowls. So
Okay.
anything from Mediterranean westward typically would have that. And then Eastern bowls are usually much more fluted. It's much more of a V shape because those are honestly a lot easier to make. And so that's the style that's existed the longest. So you can tell by shape. Most of the traditional shapes are round, but you'll see that especially as we come into the 1800s, when bowls become honestly a revolutionary piece of technology, or ceramics become a revolutionary piece of technology, and you can actually apply electricity in as you create ceramic to
Hmm.
kind of alter the shape or some of its properties. So that's when we start to see some more of the rounded, or not rounded, the more square type of bowls, or some of the more modern shapes. That also comes with industrialization, and we can, mass produce and hard press clay and fire it up in these large industrial kilns. So usually look for the legs, look for the color. Again, color is a huge sign of what people value, because we know that typically the color purple is a very luxurious color in throughout history, and also so is this blue. It's actually kind of similar to the lapis lazuli blue that is very common around the Mediterranean as well. So
Hmm.
color, feet, the shape, both horizontally and vertically, are all good signs. That's a very interesting question.
And there's so much, I mean, and you didn't really even get into like the decorations on the bowls
Oh
themselves,
yes, that's
which
right.
is by itself so fascinating. You get a sense of the history of the culture, and in the case of the bowl you showed from Turkey, the repeating geometric patterns, and it makes me wonder if you have a favorite bowl. You seem to be drawn towards bowls with some history.
Yeah. Gosh, that's a very difficult question. I I honestly think it's this shell bow. Even though I've
Yeah,
never used it, it's so unique, and I don't know if I'll ever find something quite like it. So it has to be this one. And
yeah.
these Turkish bowls, I actually bought them as a wedding present for friends. So I bought two sets, and uh, so these are meaningful in a different way. Uh, but I think it has to be that shell bowl.
Do you have your eyes on any like additional bowl that you'd like to find for your collection? Is there a
Ah,
I don't know, a style or a country that has sort of unique ceramics that you'd love to add?
yeah, Korea actually has a very rich history of earthenware as well. And they have these, it's not a bowl, but they have these giant, almost like water vats. If you can imagine that. It's like a or rain barrel. It's that big. And it's all made out of a single piece of ceramic, and they use that to store rice.
Okay.
So if I can if I can get that, that'll be incredible. There's also uh, earthenware from Africa that I haven't had a chance to explore yet. So that'll be interesting. I have a friend in Egypt right now,
Mm.
and it'll be amazing to go and visit her. So definitely starting to explore that part of the world, and what their bowls have to offer will be the next frontier.
I love the idea of using an object like this to really sort of center maybe what you look for to bring back as a memory from your travels. It sounds like you've been able to visit a lot of really cool places, and this is something that you could probably find some version of in just about every country or place that you visit. And it's kind of a interesting side adventure when you go someplace to see what sort of bowls they have, and try and pick one up and add it to your collection.
Yes, and I think one of the best part is this is fairly packable. So
Hmm.
as you travel, we all have that one suitcase that the
Yeah.
airlines give us. So sometimes I like to buy posters or art, but that takes up a lot of space depending on how it is. But these things you can apply a few layers of styrofoam and or bubble wrap, and you should be good to go. Oh, I actually usually bring these with me in my carry-on. So I,
Mm.
I usually have a backpack or something similar when I travel, and I get too nervous having these down in the storage. So I usually have them with me in my backpack under the seat in front of me.
I was just going to ask how you transported the shell bowl. I sort of picture you or your wife with that like cradled under their arm like a football, like protecting it from on the airplane.
Yes, that one we actually nested it after a few layers of bubble wrap. We actually nested it in another bowl that we didn't care as much about. So it had that extra protection as well. But usually just a few either paper or bubble wrap is good.
Sure. You said you've never used the shell bowl. It's more decorative. What do you do, assuming you use the other bowls with your food, what do you typically put in them?
Ah, so usually this is usually used for Asian dishes, and I find that this V shape is very useful for example, if you have something that's very saucy, honestly, even something like pasta, because you would all the juice and all the sauce kind of collects at the bottom, and so at
Mhm.
the very end you have this super concentrated flavor of whatever you're eating, and it's all mixed, and you have maybe 5 6 bites of it, and so it's like it's like the corner bite of a pizza. It's part of the meal that you can look forward to, and you can tell starting from the beginning. So
Yeah.
this out of all the bowls I've shown, this is the one that I use the most. And for for the Turkish bowls, honestly, they are just used for snacks. So if I have some nuts or this much larger one can hold crackers and such, but the smaller ones are usually for nuts. Sometimes if I'm cooking, I will put a little bit of spices in these just to portion it out. And this bowl is it's for soup, but it's also a little bit impractical at some points because it is quite wide.
Yeah.
But that one's for soup, and the milk pitcher is designed for milk, but we also plan on using it for tea and as well as for gravy because we don't have a gravy bowl, and this will
Yeah.
do just the job.
I love it. It's all so practical. Instead of like a picture from a trip that you put in an album, it's something you can use, and every time you use it in your home in New York, you can remind you of some adventures you've had.
Yeah, I think that's the best way of keeping your travel real because I think at least for me, I always look forward to the next place I travel to. And I find that I actually get so much satisfaction and so much joy reliving the travel that I've already done. So
Yeah.
either looking through photos or interacting with things that I've brought back from them, those are great ways of extending how meaningful a certain trip is.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think that's such a great perspective to share with our online audiences. I asked you a little bit of a different version of this before, but I like to end all of our show and tell sessions with the question of when the stay-at-home order in New York is lifted and people are flying around and exploring the world again. What's next on your list?
Ah, so we actually have a trip to Italy of all places in May that we've had to cancel. So
Yeah,
I think it will definitely be uh, visiting, if possible, visiting Italy. And I think as I think about travel now, I come with the perspective that it's one of the mediums that we can help to rebuild local economies wherever we go. And so I think in the past, my sense of travel was mostly for exploration and just having fun. But then now there's a bit more of a sense of purpose, I guess, and thinking about in what ways can travel be a positive good? Because I think we've started to see how uh, there's a lot of concerns about some of the negative effects of travel, of carbon and such, but there's also really good positive effects too. That all things need to be balanced. So Italy's a uh, big item. But then also, I've always wanted to explore more of the US. So maybe as things start to ramp back up and international travel isn't quite as active yet, maybe we'll do more road trips around. The Northeast is beautiful, so that's always a great destination. And then maybe go out to the Midwest.
I love it. I know there's never a simple answer to that question for people who love to travel. This kind of becomes a rolling list of places that you want to go still, and I hope that you get to go to some of those places soon. And I want to thank you for taking the time today to show us your really interesting bowls and talk about where you got them. Such an interesting perspective on maybe an object that a lot of people take for granted or use in a very functional way, but can really have a great tie-in to our connection to other cultures and other places. So thank you so much, Tom. I also want to thank our entire YouTube live stream audience for joining us today. You can join us again at any one of a number of live stream events that we're hosting this week and for the coming weeks. There's a very complete list of upcoming Reach the World live stream events that's updated frequently, and it can be found at home.reachtheworld.org. Thanks again, Tom. See you next time.
Thank you, Tim. Be well, everyone.